Hey there, it's Kim, registered dietitian and the owner of 26 Fitness. I am here today to share with you my tried and true and exceptionally nerdy but very effective method of meal planning for macros. I love this method for many, many reasons. One of them is that it really works well even if you're not interested in counting macros. So I personally count macros sometimes. Other times I don't really have the bandwidth to do, macro Tetris, like, oh, I need to figure out how to get in 85 grams of protein between lunch and dinner. Sometimes I just don't have it in me and I'm more focused on just healthy eating or what the heck can I get my kids to eat for dinner tonight? And so this sort of method works really well regardless of how you choose to eat for yourself and your family. There's a lot of potential for customization here, and it's something that I have really shifted how I use it over time. In fact, like my original sheet that I have is probably 20 times larger than this. I just trimmed this down for simplicity and because I'm editing my personal sheet for right now. So trying to clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to talk you through how I set this up and how I use it to meal plan when I'm counting macros. So, my setup is works like this basically. So in column A, I'll type out the full name of the recipe. So you'll see this first one, Skinny Taste Best Chicken Enchiladas. I do the full title because sometimes a dish will be like pork and rice, so if I just put pork, that doesn't necessarily jog my memory that, oh yeah, like the macros on this includes the rice or, similar to that. So sometimes you've got a dish that's kind of all inclusive. I like to make sure I put the full title in it just so I remember clearly what it is that I'm making. I go ahead and add a hyperlink to my recipe. So I'll just drop the link to the recipe right in the title. So all I got to do is hit, hover over it and you can see that I can just click right there when I'm ready to make the recipe, or if I want to remember, hey, what is it exactly that I need to do? What ingredients do I need? Things like that. Column B, I put my portion. So every recipe has a serving size. Sometimes that serving size, for me at least, is not exactly realistic. So I know that I am not a one enchilada girl. I love to eat. I'm going to eat 2 enchiladas. And part of that is my appetite. And part of that is, this particular recipe, if I ate one, it would have 17 grams of protein. I typically aim for at least like 30 to 35 at each meal. So you could potentially do 17 grams and just do a single enchilada if you prefer it that way. What I would say to you is, if you consistently eat like double the recipe and you only put macros for a single portion, you're going to end up kind of excluding recipes that you might really like and might work really well for you just because they don't, on paper hit your needs. So I kind of like just put what I typically eat and then adjust the macros accordingly. So normally this would be, 336 divided by 2, whatever that is, like 178 or whatever, 168. That would be how many calories for one, but I go ahead and just double everything. Prep time, super, super useful, especially if you're busy. I always do it in minutes as opposed to hours. So if it's something like 3 hours and 10 minutes, I convert it to 190 minutes. Your spreadsheet isn't going to know what to do when we sort it, which I'll show you in just a minute, with 1 hour and 10 minutes. It's going to do better with 70 minutes. So that's why I do that. Calories, pretty self-explanatory here. The protein, fat, and carbs that enter in grams, as well as fiber when I have it. Like most Americans, I think like 95% of Americans don't get enough fiber on a daily basis. And, I have to be really mindful of it myself. And so sometimes I'll come into dinner and like, oh, I ate like 5 grams of fiber all day. Or, if I'm planning my meals ahead, this just kind of helps me make sure that I'm meeting that need, which is super, super important for health. I include my category here, like breakfast, lunch, dinner, or snack. There are some recipes you certainly could make for other meals, but I just choose the one that I would primarily make it for. Like enchiladas for me are too complicated for lunch most days, so I just stick it under dinner. Category 2, I don't use for every recipe, but I'll throw an extra tag in there like slow cooker or meal prep if it's something that I love to make a big batch of that keeps really well for the week for planning purposes. Main ingredient like chicken, turkey, beef, fish, whey protein. I use this partly to save cost. So a lot of times I'll notice that I have a bunch of chicken in my freezer, for example, and I'll sort my dinner options based on that protein, just so I can use up what I have as opposed to going out and buying more meat, when I don't necessarily need to. And then the notes section, I don't use that often, but every so often I'll come across something like this enchilada one. It's double and freeze. It freezes and reheats really well. And so if I'm already going to make it and go through that work, I'll typically just go ahead, make a second batch, like in a foil, like baking dish, like one of those disposable foil ones, and just pop it in the freezer with the date. So that way I've got a meal in the bank when I have a busy night with my kids. So, um, what qualifies a recipe to go on this list? I add recipes to this list when I love them and my kids love them. They're kind of like my greatest hits file. So, if it's something that I made and I'm like, "Ooh, that's good," or "Gosh, this is great for meal prep," or "This has really great macros and I like the taste of it," or more importantly, if my kids love it, which is always really tricky, if you're a parent, if you know, it goes on the list. And so, like I said, my original file has hundreds of recipes in it, and it's just, I need to tidy it up a little bit. So I just did this for simplicity. So this is where the magic of this spreadsheet comes in handy. And I'm going to talk about this specific to macros. If you're trying to count macros, again, keep in mind, you can sort this however you want. So, I can show you first macros, and then maybe in the end, we'll do one that's just a quick little, like, what if you want to do it based on ingredient? So, when you're counting macros, it is super, super important to plan in advance. And so, I'll go into like MyFitnessPal and go ahead and enter my breakfasts and lunch for the next day. I'm pretty boring and tend to rotate between the same 2 or 3 breakfast recipes and the same 2 or 3 lunch recipes. So those are pretty simple and straightforward. Where it gets tricky is sometimes you're like, okay, I have to hit 40 grams of protein for dinner, and, try and keep it below this many grams of fat, and so on and so on. And, that information is helpful, but sometimes it doesn't always tell you where to look for recipes that hit that. And like, sure, you could Google recipes with 40 grams of protein, but sometimes it's kind of a crapshoot. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. And so what I like to do here is I will go up, if protein is my goal, and it usually is, because that's the one for me that's always the toughest to hit, I will highlight this column E, protein, and I'll go up to data, and then I'll go sort sheet, and sort sheet by column E, and I'm going to go Z to A, which means the highest protein meals are going to end up at the top and the lowest at the bottom. So I'm going to click that. And as you can see, my data just completely resorted. So my highest protein dinner on the sheet is roasted chicken with vegetables. It's a relatively quick dinner. I can, see kind of what the fat and the carb options are here. And all my info is right there. If I don't love that option, I can kind of make my way down the list. Again, like normally I have a bunch of these, but, like kind of pick the next one that would meet your need. Sometimes it's like, oh, okay, like I'd rather eat this, like honey and lime glazed salmon with pineapple rice. Oh, but that's a little bit higher in calorie than I need. So you can kind of just start looking at the data all in one place and figure out if there's something there that you like. Now, if you're not super interested in macros, let me just show you again really quickly how I might sort that. So I'm going to go by main ingredient. Let's say I've got went to Costco, got a ton of chicken that I need to use up. Again, I'll go to data. I'm going to go sort sheet, and I'm going to go sort sheet by column K. I'll go A to Z. It doesn't really matter. That's going to group all my chicken together, all my beef together. You can see main ingredient kind of sorted down there. It does that sometimes. But, that just gives me 10 different options for chicken that I can make for the night. So hopefully this helps you. I learned this when I was working as a lunch lady, when I was in my dietetic rotations, which honestly was such an awesome experience for teaching me how to meal plan. Everyone kind of knocks lunch lady land, but they're you learn so many those ladies are amazing, what they do to feed thousands of kids every day. And this is not quite the system they use, but I kind of based it on that. So hope this helps you. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions.